Be me, 38, systems architect for a Fortune 500. Been living in my quiet suburban home for 12 years. Meticulous lawn, prize-winning rose garden, custom-built cedar fence that backs onto the common green space. The house is my sanctuary. Everything is kept to exacting standards, perfectly within all HOA bylaws which I know by heart. I pored through them when I bought the place. I like order. I like peace. Be not me, Karen, newly elected HOA president. Mid-50s, sharp bob haircut, perpetually pursed lips, and a smile that screams, "I just smelled something offensive." She bought the McMansion on the corner 6 months ago and immediately decided our serene, well-established community needed a complete overhaul. Her stated goal, elevating the neighborhood's aesthetic profile. Her actual goal, power, control, and turning our quiet street into her personal kingdom, starting with my fence. The initial shot across the bow arrived a month after Karen took office. A formal notice, crisp white envelope, official HOA letterhead. My custom cedar fence, built to spec 12 years ago, approved by the previous board and regularly maintained, was now deemed non-compliant. It cited a newly interpreted clause about uniform architectural materials for exterior structures facing common areas. The existing bylaw was vague. Her interpretation was aggressive. I called her. "Mr. Davies," she began, voice like nails on a chalkboard, "the bylaws are quite clear. Your fence, while perhaps acceptable in a bygone era, no longer aligns with our vision for a cohesive and high-value community." I explained it was approved. I had the original paperwork, signed by the previous president. She scoffed. "Old policies are subject to review. We're moving forward, Mr. Davies. You have 60 days to replace it with a standard, pre-approved vinyl model or face escalating fines." I calmly informed her I would not be replacing my fence. She hung up. A few weeks later, another notice. This one about my rose garden. Not non-compliant this time, but exceeding acceptable height and breadth for frontage landscaping, potentially obstructing pedestrian sightlines. My roses, which had won local horticultural awards, were now a menace. The bylaw, again, was vague on specifics. It was written to prevent overgrown hedges, not carefully managed specimen bushes. I sent a detailed email with photos, measurements, and a copy of the bylaw, highlighting the specific phrasing that my garden fully complied with. No response. 2 weeks later, a fine arrived. $50 for my roses. This was not about compliance. This was about control. The true escalation began when Karen unilaterally decided the community needed a beautification initiative. This initiative involved hiring her cousin's landscaping company, Perfect Turf Solutions, at a significant markup, to redo all common areas and, controversially, mandate new designs for all homeowners' front yards. The cost would be absorbed by a special assessment levied on every property owner, regardless of their current landscaping. My own meticulously maintained yard, perfectly self-sufficient, would now be forcibly upgraded at a cost of $1,500. I attended the next HOA meeting. The room was packed, a rare occurrence. Karen, at the head of the table, beamed. "Neighbors, I'm thrilled to announce our partnership with Perfect Turf Solutions. Their vision aligns perfectly with our drive for excellence." She presented glossy brochures. The design was bland, cookie-cutter, and utterly devoid of character. When she opened the floor for questions, I raised my hand. "Mrs. Davis," I began, calm despite the rising fury inside, "could you clarify the procurement process for this special assessment? Specifically, was a competitive bidding process followed as mandated by Section 3B7 of our bylaws?" She blinked, flustered for a moment. "Mr. Davies, this is a unique situation. Perfect Turf Solutions offers unparalleled quality. We didn't feel a lengthy bidding process was necessary when we found the perfect partner." "So, no bids were sought?" I pressed. "And was this special assessment approved by a 2/3 majority of homeowners present at a properly noticed meeting, as per Section 5A2 for any assessment exceeding $500 per household?" Her smile hardened. "The board approved it, Mr. Davies. We act on behalf of the community." A murmur went through the room. Other homeowners, quiet until now, started to look uneasy. Karen quickly moved on, dismissing my concerns as obstructionist. She knew I was right. She simply didn't care. The breaking point arrived with the Common Area Expansion Project. Karen declared that a strip of land along the western edge of our properties, currently maintained by homeowners as part of their perceived backyards but technically common ground, needed to be reclaimed for a new walking path. This strip included a portion of my prized rose garden and the last 10 feet of my cedar fence, which, ironically, was positioned perfectly on my side of what I believed was the property line. She wasn't just threatening fines anymore. She was threatening to bulldoze my property. I received a registered letter. It stated that on October 15th, an HOA contracted crew would commence work on the walking path. Any structures or plantings on the reclaimed common area would be removed. No compensation, no prior consultation, just a date. Karen had crossed a line. My sanctuary was under direct assault. My peace was shattered. I looked at that letter for a long time. The date, October 15th. That gave me exactly 3 months. 3 months to transform from a homeowner resisting unfair fines into a meticulous, patient architect of ruin. My days of reacting were over. Now, I would build something much more elegant and devastating than a simple walking path. My master plan began with a deep dive into the historical records of the community. I spent hours at the county records office, retrieving original plat maps, deeds, and the very first HOA charter documents. I cross-referenced these with every amendment, every board minute, and every bylaw change over the past 50 years. My systems architect brain thrives on complex data sets, identifying anomalies and finding the critical path. Karen, it turned out, was sloppy. Arrogant sloppiness is a fatal flaw when facing methodical patience. First, the Common Area Expansion Project. The plat maps clearly showed the strip of land she intended to reclaim was, in fact, owned by the individual homeowners, designated as an exclusive easement for property beautification and maintenance. It was not common land. The HOA had a right to access for utility work, but no right to alter or reclaim. That was my first weapon. Second, perfect turf solutions. I pulled business registrations. Turns out, Perfect Turf Solutions was registered only 6 months ago, just before Karen became president. The registered owner, her sister-in-law, a clear conflict of interest, a direct violation of Section 2D1 of the bylaws, which prohibited board members from engaging in business with immediate family or close relatives without explicit, documented disclosure and a 2/3 board vote. No such disclosure or vote existed. This was embezzlement, plain and simple, dressed up as a beautification initiative. Third, the non-compliant fence and overheight roses. The original bylaws, the ones from the 1970s that Karen hadn't bothered to read, contained an original property grandfather clause. It explicitly stated that properties established before 1990 were exempt from any aesthetic changes or upgrades unless they posed a direct safety hazard, which my fence and roses absolutely did not. My house, built in 1982, fell under this protection. Her fines were not only baseless, they were illegal. I didn't stop there. I started attending every board meeting, not to speak, but to record. My phone discreetly captured every word. I got recordings of Karen dismissing legitimate questions, fabricating justifications, and even making thinly veiled threats against homeowners who dared to challenge her. I cross-referenced her statements with the bylaws, marking every instance of procedural violation, every misrepresentation. I also reached out to the other homeowners she had alienated, not directly to complain, but to discuss concerns about property values or clarify bylaws. I found 3 other residents who had been hit with similar bogus fines, and 2 whose properties were also threatened by the common area expansion. I didn't tell them my full plan, just quietly encouraged them to bring their concerns to the next meeting. I wanted their presence, not necessarily their active participation. The final piece of the puzzle involved the HOA's financial records. Under state law, any homeowner could request a full audit of the HOA's finances once a year. I filed the request, citing the special assessment and concerns about vendor selection. Karen tried to delay, citing administrative burden. I cited the state statute, the fines for noncompliance, and mentioned that I'd already consulted with a lawyer. The records, heavily redacted, eventually arrived. Even with redactions, the inflated invoices from Perfect Turf Solutions were glaring. I cross-referenced them with local market rates for similar services. The difference was astronomical. My case was solid. I had 3 months. I used every single one of them. October 14th arrived, the night before the scheduled demolition. I hadn't changed a thing in my garden or my fence. Karen had been sending increasingly aggressive letters, demanding immediate compliance, threatening to bill me for the demolition crew's idle time. I just filed them away. My email inbox contained one message: tomorrow, 9 a.m., board meeting. I decided to attend. The board meeting started with Karen's usual self-congratulatory monologue. She was particularly pleased with the common area expansion project, detailing the schedule, the costs, and the unfortunate necessity of removing certain non-conforming structures. She even smirked slightly in my direction. When she finally opened the floor for new business, I raised my hand. "Mrs. Davis, I have a few points of clarification regarding tomorrow's scheduled work." She sighed dramatically. "Mr. Davies, we've been over this. Your fence and garden are in violation. We are moving forward." "With respect, Mrs. Davis," I began, my voice clear and calm, "I believe you are operating under a series of significant misapprehensions." I stood up. "Firstly, the land you intend to reclaim, for the walking path is not, in fact, common area. Exhibit A, I projected a scanned copy of the original plat map onto the wall, clearly showing the exclusive easement designation. As you can see, the HOA has no right to alter these easements without express homeowner consent, which has not been granted." Karen sputtered. "That map is ancient. It's been superseded." "By what precisely, Mrs. Davis?" I asked, turning to face the rest of the board. "I've reviewed every amendment to the charter every board minute. No such supersession exists. Furthermore, under the original property grandfather clause, Section 7C1, my property, established in 1982, is explicitly exempt from the aesthetic mandates you've been attempting to enforce regarding my fence and rose garden." Exhibit B, I showed a magnified copy of the relevant bylaw. "Therefore, all fines levied against me, and indeed against several other long-standing residents in this room, are null and void." A ripple went through the room. Several of the board members were exchanging uneasy glances. Karen's face was turning a shade of puce. "This is absurd. You're trying to invent rules." "On the contrary, Mrs. Davis, I'm merely pointing out the rules you've chosen to ignore." Which brings me to Exhibit C, the procurement for Perfect Turf Solutions and the special assessment. I displayed enlarged invoices. These charges, totaling nearly $75,000, exceed local market rates by over 200%. And then there's the clear violation of Section 2D1. The registered owner of Perfect Turf Solutions is your sister-in-law, Mrs. Brenda Jensen. This represents an undisclosed conflict of interest and, I believe, a textbook case of embezzlement of HOA funds. The room erupted. People were shouting. The other homeowners I had quietly nudged were now loudly demanding answers. Karen slammed her fist on the table. "This is slander. I demand you cease this instant." "I think not, Mrs. Davis," I replied, pulling out my phone, "because I also have several hours of audio recordings from previous board meetings, capturing every instance of your procedural violations, your threats, and your dismissal of valid homeowner concerns. Recordings which, I might add, are fully admissible in court. Furthermore, I've already shared all of this evidence, along with a detailed legal brief, with the State Attorney General's office and a specialized pro bono law firm that handles HOA disputes. Karen looked like she'd been hit by a truck, her face drained of color. The other board members were staring at her, horror dawning in their eyes. The jig was up. The fallout was swift and decisive. The next day, the Common Area Expansion Project was canceled. The demolition crew never showed. Within 72 hours, an emergency board meeting was called. Karen was unanimously voted out of her position, effective immediately. The board issued a formal apology to the entire community, particularly to those who had been unfairly fined. My illegal fines were rescinded and refunded. A week later, official letters arrived from the State Attorney General's office. They were investigating Karen and Perfect Turf Solutions for fraud and embezzlement. The special assessment was immediately suspended, and homeowners were advised to withhold payment. The board was in damage control mode, promising a full external audit and transparency. Update, Week 3. Karen tried to sue me for defamation. Her lawyer, a sad little man who looked like he'd specialized in parking ticket appeals, quickly dropped the case after my legal team, the pro bono firm I'd already contacted, now officially representing me, provided him with the full dossier of evidence. She ended up owing my firm substantial legal fees. Karma is expensive. Update, Month 2. The state investigation concluded. Karen was found guilty of multiple counts of fraud and embezzlement. Her sister-in-law's company was shut down. Karen was forced to pay back over $100,000 in misused HOA funds, plus penalties. Her own house was put up for sale to cover the restitution. The new HOA board, much more humble, approached me about joining. I politely declined but offered my expertise as a private consultant. They accepted. Update, 6 months later, Karen's McMansion sold for a loss. She was last seen loading a U-Haul, looking significantly less perfectly coiffed. Her vision for the community died with her departure. My roses are flourishing, taller and more vibrant than ever, and I had a small, custom-engraved plaque placed discreetly at the base of my cedar fence, facing the once-threatened easement. It reads, "Established 1982, protected by Bylaw 7C1. My peace, at long last, was restored."